Good morning, all fellow human beings throughout the world. Pat, do you know that we have viewers and listeners in places like India and
I
America and
was looking up
Australia?
the last day. We have 24 listeners or viewers in India. God bless them.
I wonder what they make of
Good
us.
morning to you and all that. Yeah, I would
They
love to know
could.
what 24 people in India are seeing us, but there you go.
Oh, it's great. It's great to see. You could say we have an international podcast then. Wouldn't that be
I
true?
with people in Australia, New Zealand, America. Good God, even I think there's one or two in Brazil or somewhere. God bless us.
Some of them
Yeah,
maybe get out of bed so they can catch it live in Australia and New Zealand in the middle of the night.
God bless them.
Anyway,
Anyway,
Pat, I have bad news for you. This
yeah.
is the worst day of the year. Maybe you've heard that, have you?
Yeah.
Blue
I
Monday.
remember, by the way, Jude, when I was in my working life, I remember going on a day like this, and it was the worst day of the year. Christmas was over. All the bills for Christmas had arrived in. Your electricity bill and your whatever bill and your mortgage. And then you looked at your bank statement and you're going, oh, Jesus, look at what. As well as that, you drank too much. And you know the pair of trousers that fitted you before Christmas were too tight. And you were, the jumper or the shirt that used to be, nice and slim fit. Now it doesn't, it give you a belly like, a balloon. And you sort of go, Jesus, wait a minute. Hey, and everything that that sort of had built up over the Christmas period was suddenly like the air went out of it, and you say, now after you
Yeah.
face, I have all this money to pay back. It's the weather hasn't really improved that much. And just have and the kids are back at school, and it was just a horrible day.
Yeah. It's well timed actually. You can see why they would pick this day, the third Monday in January. You're sufficiently far from the festivities of Christmas to, not there's no aftertaste lingering with you
Yeah,
other than, as you say, indigestion and need to expand your waistline. And it's too far away from Easter, or you do see a wee lengthening in the evenings, but it's not really significant.
not
And
enough
the
to
rain
compensate.
is
No,
pissing down here. Is it pissing down in Donegal?
no, but it's been wet earlier on.
Oh, it really is a day for getting under the duvet, I think.
Yeah,
We'll come later to that, maybe. There was a guy had several things in the Irish Times this morning, several things you could do to beat Blue Monday. Oh, yes, here's some of the things he says. Do a stupid thing, he says, like organize a three-legged race with a few friends, organize a PowerPoint presentation on conspiracy theories that you actually believe, try to crack an egg in the crook of your elbow, and so on. He says, do a sensible thing. And that would be maybe get on to revenue and claim tax back, switch your energy providers, get your Wi-Fi phone contracts, save yourself money. Then he says, make a set and sell St. Bridget's Cross. You're not allowed to do that until the 1st of February. Isn't that right?
that's what I thought. Yeah.
Aye, that's sacrilege. That's sacrilege. That guy need to be taken and
Uh,
tarred and feathers. Get entertained, he says, and get a good book and a piece of music, a podcast, a film, and really enjoy those. I think there's something in that. Myself and my good wife were watching last night on YouTube on the TV an interview with I don't know what his first name was, Ishigo or something like that. Um, Kishimura, was it? The guy who wrote The Remains of the Day. The guy who wrote the
I guess Uramura, I know the guy you're on about. There, mean, I
he was fantastic. I mean, that was we watched him for the interview must have gone on for about an hour, and all you
yeah,
had was come on the screen what had happened in his life or some key thing, and then you'd see him talking obviously to an interviewer,
yeah.
but you don't hear or see the interviewer. And by God, such a he seems such an ordinary sweet guy, very good looking, a very downplaying of anything. He says he started off by writing songs,
Yeah,
inspired by Bob.
Dylan,
Jesus,
Dylan.
why did I forgot Dylan? I was thinking Zimmerman, but that's his real name,
Aye,
Bob Dylan. And he then went on to say about another singer, Tom Waits, that had influenced
yeah,
him. And he talked about how, there was techniques that they used that he used in The Remains of the Day and other novels. He really
yeah.
was a very, very sweet, nice guy. Uh,
Yeah.
no sort of puffed up. Like he won the Booker Prize with The Remains of the
Yeah.
Day, and that was a
Mm,
terrific film as well. So he's a
yeah.
lot to be proud of, and he's written some terrific books since as well. I don't think any of
Mm,
them are as good as The Remains of the Day, but I'm just responding to this guy's thing about get entertained. He's all for that, and he says the books he read when he didn't read much when he was growing up. He said he used to go to the movies and watch TV and things like
yeah.
that. And then eventually, when he did start reading, he said he started reading
Excuse me.
who was it? Jane Eyre,
Jane, yeah.
and a couple of other books like that. And it was only when he went to university he started seriously reading, and then he was writing. But
Yeah.
he was a very thoughtful guy. Like he did this. I don't know if you've heard of it. This MA in creative writing in East Anglia
Yeah.
University, and it's
University,
for
yeah, yeah.
just some pretty big guys like him. But he made the point that that's fine if you find out that you can write. It's a great,
Mm,
you take a year at it, and you're sort of not forced, but that's part of the deal that you work on trying to produce an extended piece of fiction. But he says for some people it's kind of traumatic because all their days they have thought of themselves as being writers. And then when they're faced with the reality of it and trying to do something over an extended period, they discover they're not. They
no, they're
discover
not
they're
Jude.
not. And he was
Remember
saying,
those? Go ahead, sorry.
no, 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 I've talked long enough. Go ahead yourself.
No, is it? Remember the guy Kenneth Tynan? He
Oh,
was
aye.
the preeminent critic for it in the
Yeah, he was
'60s and
terrific.
'70s,
Yeah.
and all the rest. And he was considered one of the top guys.
He was also the first man
Dissecting
to
book,
say fuck it on
fuck
BBC.
on live on TV. Yes, but anyway, apparently he thought himself as a novelist himself, and one day, or not one day, obviously, but he tried to write a novel, and halfway through it, he realized it was total drivel, and he just stopped. So here was this guy who was considered what would you say, the doyen of uh, critics,
Mm-hmm.
and couldn't do it himself.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I suppose you see that's a different kind of writing, isn't it? He was a critic,
Yeah,
really, and he was a very
yeah,
good critic as well. So perhaps people find their niche. Um,
yeah,
I think a novel's a very different thing. I think the novel's a very different thing from a short story, even, because
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
like a marathon rather than a sprint, and you
Yeah,
have to have an awful lot
yeah,
of self-belief, and you have to know about structure, which is something I never really
yeah.
learned. The other things it says is book a holiday, and actually that's you look at the TV and it's stuffed with people, companies
Come
urging
to
you
Turkey and yeah,
and showing you people
non-stop.
jumping into swimming pools and having a good time in the
Yeah,
sunshine.
exactly.
So a lot of people are very vulnerable at this stage. And the last thing he advises is this, I think it's pretty good. He says, call in sick to work, go
On a
back to bed.
duvet day.
That is good advice. That's what I think would crack any blue Mondays for you. Okay, let's
Yeah.
go to our serious matters, Pat. We can't just talk about drivel all the time. You have a story about what was it?
Well,
Dharma
Jude, the
and
story. The story. Now, by the way, there's about 40 people dead in Spain. That's going to dominate
oh,
all the
aye,
news.
those two
But
express trains.
that's high speed train. God bless them all. But anyway, Jude, the story that's going to dominate internationally is that the this Trump won again. Greenland. He's now this. I think from the 1st of February. He on Saturday announced on Truth Social, which is the most untruthful fucking side going. He said that he's going to impose tariffs on those countries who support Greenland.
Hmm.
Now, Jude, I don't know where the hell you're coming from or where anybody else, but to me, that is just out on the open blackmail thuggery. It's as simple as that. There's no getting it. Jude, basically, he's saying anybody opposes his plan is going to get blackmailed. And it's been done out in the open and so on. And I hear Michael Martin and Keir Starmer, I think, are about as weak. They have about as much backbone as the only one I can ever think on as a jellyfish. I don't know what other creatures don't have backbones, but Starmer is going to make a speech today, but he's going to try and arse-lick Trump again. You know, they consider he was the Trump whisperer, or whatever the hell you'd like to call it. He was able to get Trump the last time, 10%, and so on, tariffs deal. Michael Martin said we made a deal and we should stick with it. I agree with Macron, the French president, who says the EU should go for their bazooka uh, tariff deal, where they hit Americans with 93 billion tariffs right away. None of this bollocksing around it. They're all dancing around. It's been proved. Jude, remember Neville Chamberlain and Hitler? You can only appease so far, and then either you stick up. I think Trump has just realised that the Europeans roll over, so let's push it again. Let's push it again. So that's it.
I think you're right about Starmer. He's trying to do, face two ways at once to keep
Yeah,
Trump on side with flattery and at the same time to try to dig his heels in a bit. I'll do a little prediction. I think that the EU will stick to their guns this time. I really do. I think there's talk about a
don't
93 billion
bazooka.
euro
Yeah,
boycott or whatever tariff for the
yeah.
US. I also see somewhere that Canada has done a trade deal for cars
With
with
China,
China, down from 100% tariff to
to
6%.
6%.
And
Yeah,
it's like, I tell you, the American car industry won't like that. I'm not saying that there's huge numbers in Canada, but it's still 200 million people there.
yeah.
So
Mm.
I'd like to think the idea of somebody like what's his name? Uh,
Mark Kearney.
I like to see somebody as cool as that really
Kearney. By the way,
spike Trump's guns.
Kearney has checkmate Trump on a couple. He's done a deal with cars.
Yeah.
That's going to seriously affect the American car industry. He's also done a deal for basically wheat and stuff like that. And he's also moved closer to China. In other words, he's saying to America, and please, this is the only way. He's basically saying "fuck you" to the Americans. He's
Yeah.
actually going around them, and so on. And no, some of the Americans think this is no strongman stuff, projecting power in the world. What they're doing is pushing, and you can see it. Kearney has already America's closest neighbor, our biggest ally, has already moved significantly towards China because these days China is considered stable, pragmatic, and non-aggressive.
Yeah, you see, China's very smart, I think. I mean, well, actually, another word for it rather than smart is human. When they go
Yeah,
into countries in South America, for example, or in Africa, they provide things for them. They build roads,
yeah,
build hospitals, build schools. And as a result, they then are allowed, I don't know, I suppose, deals with raw minerals and all this kind of thing. But there's none of this talk about we'll come in and we'll blast you out of the water if you don't agree to
yeah,
everything that we say. So that the polar opposite of Trump. Well, you don't have to think very long to say which would you find the more attractive if you were a country. Trump
yeah.
saying, I'm coming in whether you like it or not, or China saying, we'd like to provide you with, buildings and roads and things like that. And in exchange, that's how the world works. People strike bargains with each other and do it that way. They don't, if you've ever seen, were you ever at a cattle fair, Pat? I was at one or two cattle fairs when I was a young fella.
No, no, no.
And it was a great sight because when the guys were doing the deal, finally they spit in their hand and they slapped the other guy
Oh,
in
I've
his
seen that
hand.
now. I've seen that. Yeah,
But I never ever saw two men threatening each other. Buy these cattle or else I'll knock your pan. What a
yeah.
stupid bloody notion.
Mm.
The very opposite. And they'd go for a drink after or, they'd be good mates and luck penny back
Yeah,
and all the rest. So, Trump really has to grow up. I don't know
yeah,
what kind of world he lived in where he got rich with that aggressive attitude. But maybe he wasn't aggressive then. Maybe he thinks this is what you do as a politician or the U.S. president. And
well,
one
I but
other thing,
you
Pat,
know,
there's
yeah,
lots of Republicans are turning their back on this. Lots of
mm.
Republicans are saying, get out of this notion that we're going to seize Greenland. And once the Republicans begin to turn against him, I tell you, Trump will be worried.
And by the way, one of the claims made, and I don't know how true it is, that one of his billionaire oligarch friends has massive money invested in Greenland,
Hmm.
and for resources and so on. And it was he who put the idea into Trump's head that this is vital for America. So, in other words, it could be as simple as one of the oligarchs having very personal profiteering motives and Trump's looking after him. It could be as simple as that,
Oh, of
because
course.
that's how he works. But
Yeah.
the thing about it is, if America takes Greenland by force, that's NATO dead. And also, Jude, there's a guy. I think he's a Finnish. He's the NATO spokesman. He says if the Americans going to do that, all American bases in Europe are off the target. There's an American can't remember his name. I think it might have been what is he wrote down. Tell us, I think he says if America does this, cooperation with Europe and intelligence and all the rest of it, trade, everything's going to be hit massively. And he says, how serious is this going to be? And he says, the old alliances which have kept the world reasonably safe for almost 75 years will be torn apart. And he says, it's not a good deal for America, no matter what way you come at it. Jude, but I hope you're right. I'm not so sure. Jude, there was a poll on, I think, Saturday.
Mm.
Uh, the Trump supporters he's got 92% rating from them. In other words, they think he's doing a great job. So I'm not so sure how many Republicans now these are the Trump cult, but
Uh,
maybe more
well, that's a
sensible.
slightly different matter, Pat. There
Yeah,
is a difference between his cult followers and the Republican senators or Republican congressmen or
yeah,
women. So I'd like to think that would be the case, that they would wise up eventually. I'll tell you one thing: if Trump takes uh, Greenland by force, I
mm,
think there'll be. I mean, China and Russia will be laughing themselves so sick they won't be able to
yeah,
stand up straight. And the rest of us will, well, according to the rules, like NATO should respond and defend Greenland. Which is,
yeah.
what you're talking about is not a tariff war. Essentially, you're talking about a real war. It'll
Zero
never
war,
come.
yeah.
It'll never come to that. It'll never
No,
come to
no,
that. I believe in this notion. The word they used of Trump, taco,
no,
TACO. Trump
yeah.
always chickens out.
Always chickens out. Yeah.
I think we'll find that's what's going to happen here. He'll find a way of getting out of
Well,
the
Jude, the
corner.
only thing is tomorrow, isn't it? I think there's a big court ruling in America tomorrow whether Trump's original tariffs are illegal. Apparently, the president doesn't have unilateral powers to do what he's done. That
Yeah,
only Congress can decide. Now, whether, but hey, Jude, uh, I don't have much faith in American judges because
uh,
they're political appointees, really, and they're
well,
all very politically aware. And right now, Trump is ruling the roost in the sense that he's, as we've said a million times, the Supreme Court it's loaded in his favor because he's appointed, I think, three of them. And there's only nine members, and there was already three fairly conservative there. He's got Congress in his back pocket. He's got the House of Representatives in his back pocket, and he's got the senators in his back pocket. He's got everything,
yeah,
right? And he's acting like an emperor. And Jude, he's going to take over Canada. He's going to take over Greenland. He's gone into Venezuela. He's talking about Cuba, gone on there as well. Jude, this is a madman. And it'll take but I guess if I was an American, I wouldn't fancy traveling too far in Europe right now. I'd say stay at home.
yeah, yeah. Did you see the thing where he is? What does he call it? Is it the Assembly for Peace in Gaza or something?
The Gaza
Which
Peace Board,
the Peace Board. He's the chairman of it for life.
your life. For
I think that's
fuck's sake.
putting bad thoughts in people's heads.
Judy, here's the thing. It's a joke. That's the whole thing. And if you stay right, Ireland's been invited to join it. If you stay longer than 3 years, you're expected to put up someone that gets £1 billion or
That's
something.
correct. That's
Yeah,
correct.
right.
Jeez.
Jared Kushner's on it, Tony
Yeah.
Blair's on it, and so on. Jude, you know someone. I think it's despicable. There's something really sickening about that. In other words, the rich guys and the powerful are all here. It looks like somebody's dead, and here's the relatives squabbling over what we can make out of this. You know,
It's sort of disgusting too, because there is such a thing, and we sometimes forget this. Is such a thing as Palestinian architects.
yeah,
Many of the Palestinian people are highly educated. A lot of them aren't,
absolutely.
but a lot of them are. And I mean, they're
Not an actor.
capable of making decisions about their own country. And I
Yeah.
think they should be certainly support them with, of course, US or English or whatever, architects or planners, whatever. But, you should, if you don't involve the people for whom you're providing, it's really colonialism in action, benign
Mm,
colonialism. We'll tell you what's good for you. We'll tell you where you should build. We'll tell you where the road should run. You know,
mm,
I often think back to a guy I interviewed once, a farmer, and he said the absence of hedges. Do you know the way
Yeah.
land in Ireland. They were making bigger
I
fields
rocks. I
and
mean,
taking out the
uh,
ditches. And he says,
mm,
never think of your grandfather as a fool because they're finding now, that that has had a really bad effect on the wildlife and all sorts of
yeah,
things. Um, anyway, that's the score there. Let's move on to another cheery topic. Iran, Pat. I think I'm going to
yeah.
follow. I'm not going to fall out with you, but I'm going to disagree with you on this probably. But talk to me about Iran first of all.
Well, I was read a wee bit in the London Times there this morning. That there's a woman, a journalist, Christina Lamb,
Yeah.
and she said that she's doing some sort of what would you say, sort of investigations. She was chatting to various people, and she says the consensus now is there's a rough. No, originally they thought it was about 2,500, 3,000. She says from what she can gather, there's 16,500 dead from talking to various people. Because in each place she talked to, they said, "Oh, there's 600 or 700 here. There was 500 or 600 there." She says it was absolutely ruthless. And she said they cut down they stopped the internet, they no communication, and the Revolutionary Guard went on full stop. One people they paid somebody, one of the officials, someone like £1,000 to take him, and he says you've got 10 minutes to cry. Their 21-year-old daughter was lying in an unmarked grave. She said that's as far as she could figure out, and so on. So she said that it was a ruthless crackdown, and of course, hey, there's two ways of looking at this. The Iranian authorities says this has all been fomented by the Americans and the Israelis, which, by the way, which is probably true. But let's not either the other way. I've met Iranians over the years who have left Iran, and they said living on the ayatollahs and the mullahs is intolerable. You can't dress how you want to, you can't listen to music how you want to, and it's very, very sort of intolerant. So you make up. That's
It's a
my take on.
theocracy. It's a
Yeah,
theocracy. You practice the religion, and there's no ifs or buts about it. I
yeah,
have mixed feelings on it, really. I think the first thing that strikes me is Donald Trump doesn't like the way Iran is run.
yeah,
My sort of reflex instinct is to say, I like the way Iran is run, and
yeah,
that's a bit stupid, really, on my part. But I mean, the gall of the Shah of Persia's son
yeah.
proposing himself as being the man who will lead Iran
I will
to new
return. I will
freedom.
return as a conquering
Oh
hero.
my God!
Uh, uh,
Bad though the Ayatollah may have been, I can't see him as being any worse than. What sort of gall does that guy? What happened to the Shah of Persia? I think he emigrated and died of natural causes, didn't he?
no, he was dying of cancer when he left. But hey,
Oh,
Jude, there was the Americans and the Brits, because of the interests of their oil companies. They absolutely removed a totally democratically elected prime minister or government. They put in the Shah, who had a secret police service, who were absolutely vile, absolutely despicable, beyond despicable. Thousands disappeared. Torture was, body people. There were lots of disappeared. But he looked after him, and that meant that the local people, the hatred for all that grew, and
mm,
that's the Ayatollahs and all these people were welcomed when the revolution came in
yeah,
1979.
yeah, yeah.
People said it can't be any worse than what we've got now. No,
Mm.
no, probably is worse, but that's
Well,
not the point. But the Americans have no right to. Every country has a right to have its own civil war without the Americans interfering in it.
yes, this notion of America knows best, and
Yeah,
any time there is, if you look back at events like this in the past, the 70s and the 80s and so on, you find that behind all of it was Americans fomenting
yeah,
their side of things. We think this guy would be a good guy to put in power, so we'll work for a regime change, get him
yeah.
in, kick whoever. So what? I mean, what appalling bloody nerve! Like, have they got a superiority complex to the extent that they can't deal with reality anymore?
Yeah,
Uh,
but you look at South America, in Chile and Argentina and all the rest of it. The Americans were up to their, Salvador Allende and all those boys, like we don't have to go too far back. Venezuela there the last day. That was all orchestrated by the Americans. And by the way, the whole thing this last couple of years against Venezuela has been orchestrated, a propaganda campaign, about how many people were anti, Chavez and all the rest. They weren't anti Chavez. what the Americans done, and they've done it in Cuba as well. Actually, Jude, here's the simple point: if communism, as they see it, or socialism is so bad, why are they so concerned and agitated about it? Why are they hitting? Why are they blockading Cuba all the time? If socialism is so bad, why don't they let it flourish? Tell everybody how bad it is, and let everybody see for themselves
Well,
how unworkable it is.
well, maybe they feel that they've got to protect people from their own foolishness than having
Yeah,
anything to do with socialism or communism.
yeah,
Oh, I know very little about South American history, recent history. I have a son who lives in the States and he would correct me on a whole lot of things, but I know for a fact, at least I'm pretty certain, that when Chavez came in, whatever things he may have done later, he definitely lifted an awful lot of people out of poverty. He took
absolutely.
control of the oil, which was Venezuela's oil, which of
Mm.
course annoyed the hell out of the Americans. Uh, he improved the health service to a great extent, and he improved the literacy rate to a great extent.
Yeah,
So he may have done other bad things later. And I think we've talked about this, that sometimes regimes come in and in order to hold the regime in place, they find that they're suddenly starting to act in an unjust fashion. I suspect that's the
mm,
case with Venezuela. I have
mm,
very little time for people. Like, there are people in our parish, for example, a couple of Venezuelans who addressed us after Mass
mm.
and told us about the bad time they were having and so on. And everybody sort of nodded. And I've found that in other groups I'm a member of, that they assume that the people in Venezuela are being oppressed right now. I don't know. Uh, all I know is that Chavez replaced a brutal dictator,
Yeah,
and that the guy who's running it now, or before he was kidnapped by Trump, that they both come out of the same sort of notion of working for the people in the country rather than
yeah,
than their own aggrandizement.
yeah,
Um, yeah, have we kicked that one off?
yeah. I would take that one.
Okay, well,
What
you got a thing about Irish billionaires. I think that's a really key one. That tell me about it, Pat.
Jude, I know the two young brothers, the Collison brothers. They started that financial servicing. I think it's called Stipe.
Stripe, yeah.
Apparently, nearly every transaction when you use your card, apparently Stipe processes are near enough. They are worth 8.8 billion, I think, each sterling, something like that. They're worth, and they're each of them are worth $10 billion. So you can work out the currency exchange rate. But anyway, I wrote it down, Jude. Ireland's 11 billionaires are wealthier than 66% of the country's population, according to a new study from Oxfam. Uh, right, yeah, the list includes Stripe founders John and Patrick Collison, who are estimated to be worth $10 billion each, along with businessman Dennis O'Brien, who is estimated to be worth 3.1 billion, and investor Dermot Desmond with a fortune of 2.3 billion. It concluded that there are now more billionaires around the world than in any time in history, with the 12 richest billionaires owning more wealth than the poorest half of humanity. Over 4 billion people. 12 people have more money than 4 billion people.
When you state it like that, it's clearly unjust and it's bad news. The people in the world that are starving and can't get by, and so many of them, and then you this small number of elite people. But I mean, supposing it was you, Pat, or supposing it was me or our children who had done what the Stripe brothers, or not the Stripe brothers, the Collison brothers did, would we not be proud of them? And we'd not say, well, listen, he's a smart guy and he worked very hard and he got that. So, he's entitled to his money. Do you want him to give it away again? Would that not be a
Yeah.
fair argument?
There's always two sides to that particular debate, but the other side of the story is, I know the guy, the it, somebody's getting rich on somebody else's work.
Hmm.
There's always that dichotomy about capitalism. The guy, he's plastering the wall, and he gets two or three other people, and then he takes on a contract for three or four houses. And then he takes on 10, and he sits with his feet up on the desk, and they're doing the plastering. He's getting rich.
Hmm.
Somebody says, okay, maybe that's fair enough, but he's getting rich on somebody else's work.
I agree. That's true, all right. But it'd be a very radical change if you didn't allow that. Because, like, Pat, supposing you have a broken window and you call a
Yeah,
glazier. he'll do the job for you, and you give him money, and he'd be pretty glad to the customer, I think, and you'd be glad to get your window fixed. Is that not the way the world
Yeah,
works?
but in a real fair society, but I know it's absolutely no. What's that word for the where we all want to live in? Is it Nirvana? What's
Oh,
the
up a
word?
magic tree.
Up a magic tree. If this tomorrow that everybody only paid for what they do, if I needed a window fixed, the guy would come along and rather than screwing me, he would just charge me what say it cost 100 quid and 20 quid for his services, 120 quid. No, 220 because the thing costs 100 and he's taking 120. But that's not the way it's going to be, Jude, and we all know that. But the argument about capitalism is, it is a form of exploitation. There is absolutely no. These guys wouldn't be getting rich unless it was somebody else is doing the work.
Yeah, you're right, Pat. I do agree with you actually. And when you see these bloated figures, like poor Dermot Desmond trying to get by on a mere 1.9 billion euro per
Yeah,
year,
yeah.
God.
Well, Judy, here's the other thing. It's very simple. Sorry for cutting across you. Like there could be up maybe 200 or 300 women. This is literally true. And some wee Bolton in Pakistan or India working 7 days a week and 10 and 12 hours, sitting maybe in a dark, dank place, with on a machine,
Hmm.
making clothes for maybe a couple of years a week, while the guy who's buying them and selling them is living with his Bentley and whatever. The guy that owns Harrods or some bloody place, and whatever. There are real simple examples of massive exploitation. So
Why?
somebody's got rich on the exploitation of somebody else, and that's a fact. It's not socialism or
Yeah.
left wing to point that out.
Well, is there an alternative? Why is it that there is no clearly socialist? This is the reply that most capitalists make. They say, "Show me somewhere in the world that socialism is working." Which actually I think is an unfair question because
Hold on, Chad. Wait a minute. There's a good answer to that one. Look, basically, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland are basically socialist countries. They are, yeah, and I think it's in what is it? One of them countries. I'm not sure. You when you go to school, you don't pay to go to university at all. Everything's picked up. The tab's picked up. Now there's heavy taxes, but it's a very, very fair, equitable society. You don't pay for your health and all the rest of it. Everybody is looked after from the cradle to the grave. Now, Jude, I am all in favor of a society like that. This sort of massive capitalist society that the Americans promulgate. Jude, the Americans claim for years we are at the top. Jude, their health system is probably the worst in the world. They are far from good at uh, education. Their prison situation is the worst probably in the world. Their gun situation. So why are we anybody seriously admire just because they're the biggest does not mean they're the best.
that's true. Our media conspire in that, of course, because every so often they print the rich list. And who's
Yeah,
at the top now? Jeff Bezos was at the top, but Elon Musk has replaced him. And Elon Musk made 10 billion over the last 2 months or whatever. We
uh,
do tend to, the media do tend to glorify these people. And there is a part of us that kind of admires how the hell did he do that? And I wonder, could I do that? Which is very bad. At the heart of it, Pat, is this, and we'll just leave it at that. What what's the case for people getting different amounts of money in our society? Like doctors get paid more than the average plumber, I would say, and certainly
yeah,
more than the average toilet cleaner. So what's the
yeah.
justification for that?
I do.
It's
No, me and you have had this argument before, and I'm amazed that you have a member of your family, a doctor. How long did that she have to study for?
yeah, he's
Like,
had a
dude, I could
study,
go.
yeah, but I mean that's
Ah,
that's
but
that's
hold
her
on, hold on,
choice.
hold on a minute. Tomorrow morning, I can go out and clean a toilet, but hey, tomorrow morning I couldn't go out and operate on somebody who's ill.
Yeah, well, maybe the guy who's operating on somebody's ill wouldn't be very good at cleaning the toilet either.
No, no, I know. By the way, I heard all the arguments during COVID that see when the guys who did the deliveries weren't working, and see when
Yeah,
the people in the
yeah,
shops,
yeah, yeah.
and so on, and see the people who bottled the water. See all
Uh,
suddenly when
uh,
that we suddenly realised who's important. But the
uh,
other side of the story, Jude, like I went to school the same as you, and there were certain people I knew had, they weren't necessarily more intelligent, but they had certain qualities. Like Jude, I studied accountancy for a couple of years, and Jude, I realized I just can't do this. I don't have the brain, I have the brains for it because it wasn't that difficult. But Jesus, Jude, that mentality to be able to stick at it. I used to get so bored. I just said, shit, I don't care. Like you need us, and the same with the guys with doctors. They can sit down. I just never had that ability to focus that strongly. I had a friend, by the way, who was a journalist, and he was studying medicine for 4 or 5 years. And he had an accident, and I said, "What happened?" He says, "I lost that ability to stay at studying something." And Jude, I never had that.
Well, my theory is anybody can study terrifically well at something they are interested in.
Yeah,
And everybody finds studying something they're not interested in extremely difficult. And I certainly would
yeah,
put myself in that class. Okay,
yeah.
Pat, we're nearly the end, and I have a special thing for today, a poem. Not the poem that I've written, but a poem which fits in quite nicely to the mood of
Blue
Monday,
Monday.
Blue Monday,
Yeah.
the worst day of the year. I
Right,
bet
right.
you
Away you
you'll
go.
recognize the first two lines of it, but I'll also bet that you won't be able to continue. It's called Solitude, and it's by Ella Wheeler Wilcox.
Oh,
Laugh,
I've
and the
heard of her.
world laughs with you.
Would you?
Weep, and you weep
You
alone.
weep
For
alone.
the
Yes.
sad old earth must borrow its mirth, but has trouble enough of its own. Sing, and the hills will answer. Sigh, it is lost on the air. The echoes bound to a joyful sound, but shrink from voicing care. Rejoice, and men will seek you. Grieve, and they turn and go. They want full measure of all your pleasure, but they do not need your woe. Be glad, and your friends are many. Be sad, and you lose them all. There are none to decline your nectared wine, but alone you must drink life's gall. Feast, and your halls are crowded. Fast, and the world goes by. Succeed and give, and it helps you live, but no man can help you die. There is room in the halls of pleasure for a large and lordly train, but one by one we must all file on through the narrow aisles of pain.
Oh, Jesus,
Cheer
that's
you
a
up,
cheerful
Pat.
poem. Yeah, that would not cheer you up. Perfect.
You may be tempted to
What is
find a
the
whiskey
feast?
bottle and a revolver.
Geez, I must run out and get that bottle of whiskey. What is the feasting? You've got friends fasting. You're on your own. Jesus Christ, dude.
It's the truth. It's the truth. That's what makes you
Yeah.
such a popular guy, Pat. You're a cheerful guy. Although you rarely smile. You smile on occasion, but it's usually a state occasion.
Yeah, my wife, she's our wedding photographs. What do you call it? She says, "There's not a single we and mourning." Dude, I don't smile. That's simple. Hey, but by the way, before we go, you just said something. I was watching the African Cup of Nations final last night, and Jude,
Quick,
if you
quick.
wanted controversy, it was brilliant. There was a penalty award, and the whole team walked off the pitch and all the rest. Jesus, Jude, it was great to see it. It was like old-fashioned days.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, right,
No.
Pat. Enjoy your
All the
week
best,
now.
Jude.
See you.